right, so yeah, let's start by bringing our attention home, coming back to ourselves and our own experience, and just doing a brief meditation. So, like always, just sitting in a way that's comfortable, relaxed. So, see if we can just embody a sense of being at ease, like no big deal. We're just exploring, exploring our own experience, exploring our minds. And that can be really fascinating and rewarding thing to do. And we don't need to have this sense of trying to get somewhere, of striving or struggling, forcing. Just allow yourself to ease into the present moment, gently releasing the past, the future, and maybe allowing your attention to drop down into the body as a way of becoming present. Thoughts can be in the past and in the future, but the body is always in the present. So just tuning into this whole field of tactile sensations is a very good way of centering ourselves, grounding, coming home. Maybe paying attention to the breath, being really curious about how it actually feels to breathe. And as we're sitting here, see if you can bring to mind your highest intention, your highest aspiration, the things that for you bring true meaning to life. And ideally, our meditation practice should be in service of that ideal, of that intention. So maybe we can envision ourselves transforming and developing amazing qualities of the mind and of the heart, finding ways of cultivating genuine, lasting, stable happiness, ways of eliminating or lessening all the suffering that comes from uncontrolled thoughts and mental afflictions, just purifying our minds and hearts, cultivating our own highest potential. And we can also bring to mind the state of the world, this mess we all find ourselves in, and bring to mind the immense suffering of sentient beings, of humans and animals. And our intention, our motivation can be to be of true benefit to all of them, ultimately, starting with the ones that we interact with, starting with our inner circles and allowing those to expand forever outward and become wider and wider. How can we be of benefit? How can we be of service? What can we bring to the world, to others? So our own cultivation of beautiful qualities, it doesn't only benefit ourselves, it benefits everyone. So therefore we engage in study and meditation and practice to fulfill our own highest potential and to bring wisdom, clarity, love, and compassion to others. And, and with that, we can bring to an end this brief initial meditation and setting of intention, and um, move into whatever we're going to talk about today, which is the final session of these 4 sessions. So, yeah, just to summarize briefly the first two sessions. I mean, obviously, we're talking about shamatha, calm abiding, the development of clear and focused and stable mind and attention. So the first 2 sessions, we focused on the breath as the object. So we focused on like the full body rhythm of the breath. We then moved down to focusing on the breath in the abdomen, the stomach, and then we also focused on the breath at the nostrils. So using these these variations as ways of emphasizing the 3 qualities that I've been talking about, the qualities of relaxation, of letting go of ease, and then the quality of stability or focus, and the quality of clarity or vividness. Yeah, and we played around with things like counting or noting the breath, etc. And then last session we moved from using sensations in the body or sensations associated with the breath as the object of our meditation, the object of our attention, and we moved on to the mind, using the mind as the object. So really just paying attention to all the things that arise in the mind, thoughts and impulses and emotions and images and memories and so on. So, but we did it not by, normally we're just caught up in these things and we're being pulled in this way or or that. So we're completely fused with thoughts, we're merged with them, and there's no wakefulness, no awareness of thoughts or thinking happening. So we cultivated what's called the backward step, just taking a metaphorical step backward and then just observing thoughts as thoughts, emotions as emotions, and so on, with the instructions of doing so with no distraction and no grasping. And when we're focusing on the breath, then distraction, what distraction is very obvious, because if we're not focusing on the breath when we're meant to or trying to or intending to, then we're distracted. So it's quite obvious. But when the mind itself is the object, then what no distraction means becomes less obvious. But it's all about whether we're fused with or kidnapped by the thoughts, or if we're actually observing them. So getting distracted means getting back into the autopilot, or yeah, just daydreaming state, I guess you could call it, or just being pulled away with by thoughts as if they were real and solid and super important. So using the mind as the object for our shamatha practice has some really tangible benefits, and one of them is that we become less of a slave of our own minds. So we can cultivate this ability of just observing rather than being pulled away all the time. One metaphor that I like, I don't know if I've shared it, but it's like, we're like standing on the platform waiting for the train, and that train in this metaphor is that thought that comes along. And the difference here is, like, normally we just get on the train and off we go. But with this practice, the train comes into the station and then we just stand there watching it, and the train pulls away, and it, without us on it, so to speak. So it's that freedom of just remaining still and stable and unfazed when all these thoughts are just moving past, and we're not stepping onto any of those trains. And it's also this way, it also becomes a bridge into insight practice, insight meditation, vipassana practice, which is obviously not the focus of this course, but which would be the natural progression going on from our shamatha practice. So, like, really starting to investigate the nature of reality, investigate the nature of the mind, which is impossible to do well unless we have a mind that is fairly stable and clear and pliable. Yeah, and so with that meditation, we played around a little bit with using things like labeling. So if a thought comes up, we can just label it thought or thinking. Maybe if a sound arises in the field of awareness, we can just label it sound, memory, or whatever it is. But yeah, just as a way of maintaining the position of the observer, like, yeah, instead of getting involved with the thinking, we can just like gently label it. So that's akin to the counting of the breathing, just a technique to maintain undistracted and focused on the actual meditation. So yeah, so that's what we've been up to so far. And this last session, which I will get to in a little bit, is the object of our attention or our shamatha meditation will move from the mind now to what you might call awareness itself. So the object of focus will be we can call it the space of awareness, or yeah, the space in which all the stuff of the mind appears. So moving from the content to the context, you might say. But I'll get into that just a little bit. But I thought also I would just mention in the lead up some of the I don't know. So where does shamatha practice actually lead? You know, if you really get into it. So I mentioned that this is the foundation of insight meditation, of vipassana. But if you look at, so there's details account of how that progression towards what's called shama or calm abiding, or the cultivation of this practice, how that looks. And of course, they say that in order to progress on that path, you need to devote quite a lot of time to meditation. It's, most people can, you get maybe 10 or 20, maybe 30 minutes in per day if you're lucky, in a busy life, which is amazing because just 10 minutes of shamatha will definitely help keep you sane in this crazy world that we're trying to navigate. But if we want to progress, then more practice is needed. So it's one of my teachers said that maybe when you can devote 2 hours per day, then you can maybe start really progressing. But ideally, if people do this really seriously, they obviously go on to longer term retreats, where the conditions are super conducive and there are no distractions, and you can spend many hours per day meditating. But that's a luxury that few of us had. And again, having said that, it's really good if we can devote some time to retreats. So maybe every year we go off on a week or 10 days at least, where we can really, really focus on meditation in a more structured and in a way that allows us to deepen our experience. Because again, that will be very, very helpful just in everyday life. But yeah, I thought I would just mention, so on traditionally the stages towards realizing calm abiding, it's normally divided in 9 stages. I thought I'd just mention them quickly. You could have certainly a 4-session course or a 4-year course on the 9 stages of shamatha, but I thought I would just, like I said, briefly mention them. And maybe you've seen these traditional tankas or paintings with it's a monk and then an elephant and a rabbit and so on, where they follow these stages and the mind gets progressively more refined. So those are the 9 stages. And the first stage it's called placement of the mind, where you just begin learning to place your attention on an object like the breath, but it just quickly wanders off. Then the second stage is called continuous placement, where you now can keep your attention on the object longer, but still with a lot of distraction. And they also traditionally said that initially there might actually be more distractions as you start getting into the practice, like you're dredging in, deeper and deeper levels of the mind, and just stuff just flushes forward, almost like a cleansing or something. Then the third stage is called patch-like placement. So you notice the mind wandering, but now you can bring it back more quickly and more reliably, more stably. Then the fourth stage is called close placement. So here distraction starts to decrease and mindfulness starts to improve. Um, and you're really now able to stay more consistently with the object. And then the fifth stage is called subduing. So now one starts working with more subtle forms of distraction and dullness. And here it's also said that joy may start to arise just from as a result of the practice itself. Joy, or sometimes even like rapture and really positive emotions. Then stage six is called pacifying, where subtle excitement, restlessness starts to become ever more manageable, and the mind just starts growing more calm and more clear. Then stage seven is called fully pacifying, where even very subtle agitation and dullness are starting to be pacified. The mind is starting to become extremely stable. Then stage eight, it's called single pointed attention, where you can remain on the object effortlessly with really strong clarity and stability. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama often says that at this stage you can stay easy for like 4 hours without like this single disturbance in the mind. And then the ninth stage, what we call balance placement, where there's this perfect balance between relaxation and focus, and the mind is just utterly supple, sorry, not subtle as well, but supple, joyful, and just deeply, deeply still. Um, yeah, so that would be like the Olympic level engagement in shamatha practice. But I personally find it's inspiring to read about those things and what can actually be accomplished and what the true potential of the mind is. And especially as being a psychologist, I find it really interesting that none of this is really recognized in Western psychology and in neuropsychology or neurology. But now a lot of studies are starting to happen even with practitioners and yogis cultivating shamatha at these levels. So I also find that to be really fascinating to see what is the, because from a Buddhist perspective, we're cultivating the mind, but it's certainly correlated to what happens in the physical brain. So it's really interesting to see what happens to the brain in itself when you do these kind of practices. And then though I should say that especially when you hear we're like most of us are just fiddling about on stage one or maybe two, and it's just every time we sit down, it's just this huge mess of thoughts and distractions and not much calm or clarity at all. So then it's easy to get despondent and frustrated and I've been meditating for decades and I'm still, blah, blah. So it's always, and I've emphasized this before, it's so important to always approach practice with curiosity and warmth and openness and kindness and softness just towards ourselves and our own experience. So it's just sitting down meditating at all is amazing. Just having the inclination to do that is it's mind-bogglingly awesome. So I mean it's already amazing uh, that we're inclined to do that. So just, yeah, cutting ourselves lots of slack and being really gentle on ourselves. And I don't know, maybe um, one image that comes to mind is like a parent with like a newborn baby. So they just had their first child and they're holding this newborn baby in their arms. They're looking at it and just, imagine the love that's there, that the attention that comes from, this just like the most amazing thing in the world. And that parent's attention will be just sucked into uh, that baby with just effortless. Um, and if we could, if we can just approach our own experience like that, if we could realize how amazing it is to even have a conscious experience at all, and the interest and the curiosity and just the I don't know, focus, the tenderness that would come from that. That's kind of what we want to lean into, which is the opposite of striving and clamping down and forcing ourselves. So yeah, so sometimes that sometimes that is not how we experience our own experience, obviously, but at least allowing for those types of qualities to be the foundation of our meditation, as best as we can, and watering those seeds or cultivating that approach to our meditation. I think it's probably the best we can do. Um, yeah, so what else leading into this meditation of awareness and awareness? Um, yeah, maybe I should mention also so what those nine stages of shamatha, when brought to their fruition, what they lead to is, so usually in Buddhist psychology, the mind is divided into three levels, you might say. So there's, first of all, there's the gross mind, then there's subtle mind, and then there's very subtle mind. So the gross mind, that's where we live. That's just samsara. That's the craziness that is our everyday experience. And that's not a very refined state or level of mind. So what shamatha helps reveal is the next level, which is called subtle mind. And this in Buddhist psychology is called alaya vijnana, or substrate consciousness, maybe. Different schools of Buddhism have different takes on this, but it's basically it's in one way it's the level of mind that kind of flows from lifetime to lifetime. So it's like a stem cell consciousness from which experiences as being a human being or being another other kind of sentient being arises from. So it's still a conditioned level of mind, but it's a very, very subtle level of mind. So when this is fully experienced, we experience it. It has the qualities of bliss, luminosity, and non-conceptuality. So the bliss part is that it's just like this serene, non-sensory joy that is not conditioned by anything. It's just like this wellspring that just bubbles up, and it's described as bliss beyond anything we can experience from what we can get from sensory experiences. And it is the natural state of the mind, or the subtle mind. And the luminosity is just like this utter clarity or radiance that illuminates all mental and sensory phenomena. So it's just, yeah, just like this amazing clarity. And it has the final one, non-conceptuality, is this complete stillness, free from any discursive thoughts, like an like an ocean unmoved by waves, just completely limpid and still and stable. And um, I should say also, I'm right now I'm talking completely out of my own experience. I should I should definitely clarify that this is I'm talking from what I've heard and not first person experience at all. But so what is traditionally said is that when you perfect calm abiding, or when you realize calm abiding, and you're now resting in this subtle mind or this substrate consciousness, that's often mistaken for enlightenment itself, because it is just so amazing and so far beyond anything we experience on the gross level of mind. So it's easy to think that, oh, I'm there and I'm now enlightened, because all afflictions have been subdued and you're just resting in this perfect blissful state. And it's apparently easy to, if you experience that, it's easy to get stuck there and thinking that, okay, I'm done, I'm now an enlightened Buddha or whatever. But it is said that even though you have realized calm abiding and perfected shamatha, you haven't moved an inch towards enlightenment. Which that sounds like a bit harsh, maybe, but you haven't done the work of insight and wisdom and vipassana, and you haven't realized emptiness and all of the things. And you certainly haven't realized the very subtle levels of mind, which is called clear light mind or Rigpa or Buddha nature. You have, however, now honed your mind to a level where that work of wisdom and insight becomes much, much easier and doable. So you now have the perfect instrument to do the work of to do the real work of being a Buddhist, I guess. So shamatha is a necessary prerequisite for insight, wisdom, but it's also easily mistaken for the real thing. And a lot of people, even, you don't have to reach the ninth stage of shamatha. You can, like, even on the levels where you start experiencing joy and bliss at any level, then it's easy to get stuck there and you have these amazing experiences. And you think that that's the point now of your practice, and then you fall into the trap of complacency and thinking that you have realizations that you have not. So yeah, so it's good to be aware that shamatha practice is a necessary prerequisite for insight, and wisdom, but it's not to be mistaken for the real thing. All right, that was quite the preamble. Um, yeah, maybe I'll just because I'm going to go into the actual practice that I thought we'd do today, the awareness of awareness practice, but maybe just to give everyone a little break before I charge on, I'll pause and see if there are any questions or comments either on this bit right now or any of the previous sessions, or anything you've noticed in your meditations, if you've been doing any in between the teaching sessions. Yeah, just I'll just pause and open up for whatever questions might be um, on your mind. I'll have a look at the chat as well. Yeah, and yeah, if you do have questions or comments, just unmute yourself um, and yeah, share.
I know lots of people right now who are stuck in that stage, and they have been for quite some time. And I just try to be patient with it. But good points. Thank you, Martine.
Hmm, thank you.
I'd say something. You see, and thank you for this class. But I wanted to say that when I find my mind running around or having a party, I'd say sometimes I bring myself back to the motivation. And I've
Hmm.
been finding lately to sit, and I find I'm a little just too busy. Is I go back and I have a statement I read, and I try to feel that statement as I'm sitting, reminding myself of why I'm sitting in my motivation. And I read it slowly. It starts to kind of quiet. Seems to help sometimes.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I guess that's why motivation and intention is so important. Also, it can help us, if we do have a tendency to get stuck in, you know, even enjoying the fruits of shamatha practice, then if we remember our vaster motivation, even if our motivation is bodhicitta or anything, not even anything that grand, but just remembering why we're practicing and um, remembering our teachers and their example, then that can really help us to be, to bring joy and I don't know, purpose into the practice, but also help us to not get stuck. So that's really good advice to keep returning to our intention. Um, yeah, so all right, so let's turn then to this awareness of awareness practice, which is sometimes it's called resting in stillness. Sometimes it's called shamatha without an object or shamatha without a sign, because the it's like there is no object. Now we had the breath, then we had the mind, and now it's awareness itself, which is really devoid of any tangible quality. So, but it is still a shamatha practice rather than a vipassana practice. So, and we still have those aspects of cultivating a calm and clear and focused mind. So we still have the aspects of relaxation and stability and clarity. But now we're turning awareness kind of in upon itself. So simply knowing or being aware of being aware. And sometimes I notice when um, some people really take to this practice immediately and they find it much easier, if that's the right word, than maybe focusing on the breath and so on. They find it more relaxing and less restrictive. and they immediately take to it. Some people just find it very, very challenging because it's hard to, so what am I paying attention to? What am I supposed to be doing here? And it's like it's almost too simple. One of my teachers said it's like trying to walk to your feet. If you take as soon as you take a step, you've kind of gone too far because you're already there in a sense. But that seems too easy. Just okay, I'm just observing the fact that I'm aware that that seems a bit vague. So yeah, so we'll see which if probably we've done this practice before, but yeah, it's interesting that people kind of do tend to fall into one of those camps. But yeah, so this is really about being, I guess you could say, as opposed to doing. So we're always doing, we're always trying to fix something, and we're always moving metaphorically or mentally. But so this is about just being. There's no doing to be done. It's just like resting in this open, spacious stillness of awareness, and which is really can be really challenging. There was a recent experiment. It's probably a few years back now, but and maybe you've heard about this. But they had an experience where they put people in a room. There was a desk. They could sit down. They're supposed to sit there for 15 minutes, but there was nothing in this to do in this room. The only thing available to people was that they could administer an electric shock to themselves. So, and also prior to the experiment, they've done another experiment where they, rated how uncomfortable this electric shock was, and you got certain rewards for, administering the shocks to yourself, so on and so forth. But in this room, there was nothing else available, and people found it so difficult to just sit with their own experiment or experience, not with no distractions, no stimuli, nothing, just being there with themselves. They found it so challenging that I think it was 65% of the participants rather administered electric shocks to themselves. So, at least now I'm doing something. So it's really, really challenging for most of us to just sit with, in a sense, nothing. But on the other hand, we're not sitting with nothing. We're sitting with awareness itself, which is, in a sense, absolutely everything. So I think it's just a matter of becoming more in tune with something that is much, much, much more subtle than what we're usually mentally engaged with. So just like a detox of compulsive thinking and allowing ourselves to cultivate this ability to just rest in awareness itself. And this is also the best foundation for doing what we did last time, which is actually observing thoughts. So finding that stability of resting in awareness, then we can have much more clarity when we do engage with our thinking. And also by doing this practice, this can become more of a default mode in daily life. So they say that highly realized masters like Dzogchen masters, they're just constantly resting in this very subtle mind in Rigpa or Dharmakaya or Buddha nature. That's where they live. That's their experience throughout throughout every moment of experience. But even not coming to that state, even starting to do this practice. And now I can speak from personal experiences that there is a greater sense of ease and spaciousness, and things that, caused huge problems and seemed very, very difficult. They now just become like more like blips on the radar screen, and they come and go. And yeah, just for for me, what I certainly can report from having uh, meditated for, I don't know, 25 years or something, is it's certainly, it is at least a bit more quiet, and there's a bit more sense of just, being able to rest and be more at ease with just being, and not being so caught up with, yeah, the busyness that we do create completely on our own and completely unnecessarily. So yeah, and just this practice of awareness, I personally find very, very helpful for that. Um, yeah, um, so in this practice, which we're just about to do, is the thing we're paying attention to is awareness. So maybe we can do a short experiment. So if you just turn your attention to your own experience and see if you can become aware of being aware, like just noticing I am aware. And let's do that for just 5 seconds. So if you could, for these, few seconds, if you could notice and become aware of the fact that you are aware, you're having this conscious experience. That's that's it. That's what we're doing. So just resting in that. Um, and of course, there will be various appearances to the mind, but um, they're not important. We're staying with the experience of awareness itself. And one metaphor for that, which I've already used, is like having this clear blue open sky with clouds. So the clouds are like the thoughts and emotions and memories and all that. But we're now identifying with the open sky itself. So we're being that space in which those clouds appear. Um, so it's like opening into that spaciousness and vastness of awareness itself. Um, and one thing that I haven't uh, introduced so far, I could have, but it becomes more important here, which is so one of the traditional instructions is let your gaze be vacant. So traditionally, this meditation is done with eyes open. So if you haven't meditated much with your eyes open, that can be challenging, but um, it is um, it is really good to have the eyes at least partially open to let some light in. And it's also yeah, so having like this soft, unfocused gaze in front of you with no particular object. Um, and you can blink and don't strain your eyes. So just let your eyes be relaxed, like kind of they would be during daydreaming, something like that. And what this does, it helps um, dissolve this strong boundary that we have between inner and outer experience. So obviously, from a materialist worldview, there is only the brain. There is no mind. It's just everything that happens within our skulls in the brain. So we do assume that thoughts happen inside the head. That's how we speak. But there's no scientific proof that thoughts are in the head. And of course, there's brain activity and they correlate with our mental experience of thoughts. But um, science certainly hasn't shown what consciousness is or where those thoughts are. So obviously from a Buddhist perspective, those thoughts are in the mind, which is not the same as the brain. So they're not physically outside the brain, nor are they physically inside the brain. Um, so it's dissolving this sharp boundary that we have between outer experience and inner experience. Because also what we call outer experience is so much our own mental projection. So it's this boundary between subjective and objective um, can start to become a bit more fuzzy and not as distinct by simply meditating with the eyes open and also help eliminate this illusion that we have that we exist kind of behind the eyes. Like, where am I? I'm just inside the head somewhere looking out through my eyes. So this is just like a conceptual illusion that we have. Yeah, so for those reasons, um, I would encourage you to at least experiment with keeping the eyes open during this meditation. So this it helps also incorporate meditation into daily life because when we're out and about, we don't have our eyes closed. We're engaged with the world, but we can still that can still be our meditation, but not if we keep our eyes closed. And then eventually, hopefully, this can lead to um, the breaking down of this idea of a separate physical and mental realm, and that can lead us in the direction of non-duality and seeing reality more as it actually is. Yes, I guess that's like my sales pitch for keeping eyes open. So a bit longer sales pitch than anticipated. Um, yeah, what else? If you find that you get tense or agitated or distracted, then also when you can lower your gaze, um, see if you can just kind of like release your awareness into this space that I mentioned, releasing appearances, and again, emphasizing relaxation. So kind of like when we had the breath and just emphasize the out breath to release and let go. So just release into space. And if you have the opposite, so you're starting to get dull and drowsy and just spaced out blank, then if you want, you can elevate the gaze and you can maybe open the eyes more. So you let in more light and make almost like cranking up a dimmer, so focus or emphasize clarity and vividness in your experience. And the final suggestion, if you get just completely lost in this practice, then you can always return to the breathing and anchor your attention on the rhythm of the breath to regain some of that stability and clarity. And once you find that you're more grounded, then just releasing the breath and just opening your um, awareness up. So it's like completely broad and panoramic and wide. Um, yeah, so those um, would be some little tips. All right, so one final quote and then let's meditate. So this is a quote from Dujum Lingpa, Tibetan master, and his instructions for this practice is the following: loosely relax And watch your thoughts from afar, clearly observing what arises. That which observes is called mindfulness. That which is observed is called movement. And resting in that state is called stillness. Identify them as such and meditate. If you meditate earnestly, stable meditative experience of the bliss, luminosity, and non-conceptuality of shamatha will arise in your mind stream. So with that, let's see how we go, and let's do a little bit of practice. So I think also potentially I will use slightly less instruction that I have so far in the guided meditations and leave you a little bit more to your own direct experience in this one. But like always, start by finding that comfortable, relaxed posture, position. And we can allow the body to settle in its natural state. Allow the breathing to find its natural rhythm without interference, without control. Noticing the millions and billions of processes happening in our bodies and just allowing them to happen without any interference. Allowing the body to find a state of natural ease and rest. And also allowing our speech to settle in its natural state. So obviously we're remaining silent, no outer speech, but also in terms of inner speech, the constant mental chatter. See if we can just allow that to settle. And it will settle if we don't engage in it, if we don't feed into it. And then finally, we can allow the mind to come to rest in its natural state. Bringing our attention to awareness itself. Noticing what it means to be aware. Our awareness is like space regardless what moves through it, it's still open, vast, and also luminous in that it's illuminating all experiences. And it's also like space in the sense that it allows everything to arise. Whatever arises in your experience does so in this space of awareness. So release all appearances into that space and allow yourself to rest there. And just notice in this moment if you're aware of being aware, Like I said, sometimes it can be helpful to return the attention to the breath, anchoring your attention on the breathing, resting the breath on the rhythm, resting the attention on the rhythm of the breathing. And then once again, allowing your awareness to become broad and open. So it's like a vast ocean. On the surface, there is movement and the waves, the wind. But below that, there's this completely still depth. So see if you can sink down to the depth of that ocean, to that stillness. Identifying with that awareness, which permeates everything but doesn't move, which is clear and still and radiant and luminous and vast and open. Are you aware of being aware? And then briefly and towards the end of this meditation, we can just drop in the question, who am I? Just looking into your direct experience. Usually we identify with the narratives and the stories in our minds. I am this, I am that. So many stories about who we are. So these stories are like the clouds in the sky. And to the extent that we are anything, we are the sky, not the clouds. Or putting it in a way that limits the risk of something to grasp onto. We might say that this vast open awareness, that's at the very foundation of what we experience. That is the very nature of our minds. And in fact, it is the very nature of reality itself. So, one last time, just release all appearances into that vast open space of awareness itself, and just rest. And with that, we can end this meditation, this resting in stillness, this awareness of awareness, this shamatha without a sign practice, and return our attention to each other and whatever remains of this class. Okay, so I'll open up the virtual floor once again to see if there are any questions or comments, concerns.
Martin, that was a very deeply relaxing meditation, I thought.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Relaxing is very good, as I think I've mentioned a few times. Okay, there does not seem to be any questions, at least not right now. So I'll keep going for a bit more, and then if something pops up, just raise your virtual hand or whatever. But I thought I would, as the very last part of this, just mention a few things about integrating this practice into everyday life and kind of putting it in the broader perspective of things. And I've tried to do that a little bit throughout. Talked about how you can incorporate this in your daily routine and so on. But I think one of the main contexts in which to place this practice is so I think I mentioned previously this idea of what the Greeks called hedonia versus what the Greeks called eudaimonia. So this idea of happiness that is either stimulus based or sensory based, which is the hedonia or the sensory based pleasure or happiness, which in itself is not bad. We need to look after all of that. We need to have food to nurture our bodies and a place to live and all our valid pursuits of meaningful careers and good friends and all of that it's completely valid, but it's also good to know that any type of happiness that relies on certain experiences or certain sensory inputs, the things we hear or see or touch or taste or smell and so on, that they are by their nature transient and unreliable, and they're more about, in a sense, what we can get from the world, what we can extract from the world. So useful, but we shouldn't put all our eggs in that basket. And when it comes to meditation, even now when mindfulness meditation is becoming really popular in the West, and the dangers that I mentioned, slipping into the traps of thinking we've reached the end goal, but when we haven't. So just being aware that meditation can certainly be used in that way. And although it's extremely good to have for stress reduction and all those things, those are valid effects of meditation, but they're, from a Buddhist perspective, they're not the point. They're not at all the point. They're just like nice side effects. So that brings us to the other type of happiness, which is the eudaimonia, or the genuine happiness, the stable happiness, that inner well-being that comes from the cultivation of beautiful inner qualities. And that type of happiness is stable, it's reliable, um, and um, from a Buddhist perspective, it's true happiness, whereas the other happiness is actually if you analyze deeply, it's actually a type of suffering, the suffering of change. So if we can emphasize this eudaimonia, this genuine, stable well-being, and realize that our shamatha meditation is in service of that, it is like I don't know, preparing the ground so that we can sow those seeds of compassion and love and generosity and caring and patience and wisdom clarity of insight. That's the purpose of doing these meditations. So we emphasize this eudaimonic maybe happiness, and I think one reason why I think it's really nice to use those Greek words rather than maybe the corresponding Buddhist words is that this is something that is not in itself particularly Buddhist. You can incorporate this type of meditation into any any solid worldview, whether it's religious or atheist or whatever it is, and you can integrate this idea of hedonic and eudaimonic happiness into any worldview, and then the meditation can be of service of genuine happiness, which is beneficial not only for ourselves but for everyone else. So I think it's also good to realize that the meditations we have been doing, they're not religious. They can be brought into pretty much any context. Yeah. But then, of course, from a Buddhist perspective, the shamatha meditation is part of the broader development with something sometimes called the three higher trainings, like the entire Buddhist path formulated in terms of cultivating ethics or shila, cultivating concentration or samadhi, and cultivating wisdom or prajna. So you can certainly put this in a very Buddhisty context, and it's absolutely foundational to Buddhist practice, and but it can also be a very secular thing. Yeah, so maybe finally a few tips or pointers on how to create conducive create a conducive environment in our life or conducive conditions in our life to cultivate more of this relaxed and stable and clear mind, cultivate more of shamatha in our life. So like I mentioned, it's good to have a supportive environment, and in daily life, that might mean just having a place where we can practice undisturbed, but sometimes going off on retreats, where we have the ultimate conducive environments, but also keeping friends that appreciate these things as well, which is the idea of sangha, not sangha in the ordained sense, but sangha in supportive friends, and having wise friends that also appreciate things like meditation, but also having few desires with respect to what we don't have, so we don't hanker after a million different things we think that is going to make us happy. And then the flip side of that, being content with what we actually do have, which for most of us is quite amazing. We're healthy enough to meditate. We're We have teachers. We have access to teachers and teachings. We have the inclination to practice. And yeah, so if we focus on cultivating contentment, that is very conducive to the practice. And maybe simplifying our lifestyles, engaging in fewer activities, um, emphasizing the preciousness of having this human life, remembering impermanence and death, which can, bring some clarity and some emphasis onto what is actually meaningful and important, and that can help us drop activities that are just um, keeping us busy, stressed, and mentally occupied. Um, and of course, keeping a moral and ethical discipline in terms of our social engagement, engagement with the environment, and also how we engage with ourselves. So, following this principle of if we can, we should benefit, but if we can't benefit, then at least don't harm ourselves and others. So, following the principle of harmlessness, of nonviolence, and ethical discipline as the foundation for our meditation. And then, yeah, the final tip, which is maybe harder to do, but that is stepping back from compulsive thinking. And we are addicted to thinking, and 98% of our thoughts are complete garbage. Well, at least I'm just, speaking from my own personal experience. So that's an addiction that we can hopefully quit. We think that like even our mental health is contingent upon us solving thoughts like they were some kind of tricky equation. If we can ever just place everything in its right place and think the right thoughts and analyze things in the right way, then we'll be happy. But thoughts are overrated. And the thing we need to do, especially in the beginning, is just step back from all of it. Just let it go. And then, when we deliver or um, when we cultivate more mental stability and clarity, then, thinking and analyzing and um, things like vipassana meditation, um, that can be really helpful. But the first step is just, yeah, don't pay too much attention to thoughts. Yeah, so those would be some little tips for implementing shamatha practice into everyday life. And I had more things to say, but it's it's now at the end of this class. How did that happen? Um, yeah, let's um, let's see if there are just some final question, or um, let's take a couple of more minutes if they are, uh, and if they're not, then I guess we've come to the end.
Martin, I have just a quick question. What is the difference between shamatha meditation and vipassana?
Yeah, so shamatha meditation is strictly about, sometimes it's called concentration meditation, which is a tricky word uh, for our Western minds, but it is designed to cultivate this stability and clarity and uh, non-conceptuality of a focused mind. So less distracted, more focused, more present, and that is the foundation then for insight meditation or vipassana meditation, when we start to investigate the nature of reality, things like impermanence, um, things like suffering, the nature of unsatisfactoriness, things like selflessness, emptiness, interconnectedness. So one way of making that delineation is that Vipassana meditation always entails some kind of questioning. So there's always a question there about impermanence, for example, or about the nature of the mind. So yeah, so one is shamatha meditation is like honing our instrument, and then Vipassana meditation is like doing the actual research, maybe. I don't know, it's a weird metaphor, but yeah. One is concentration, the other is the cultivation of insight, wisdom, something like that.
Okay, thank you very much. That was very clear. And that's another good point about the way you organize the class, in my opinion. Dividing it up that way, shamatha versus vipassana. I mean, I've heard, I sort of get those terms always in context, but I never heard it laid out the difference quite that clearly. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, maybe I'll come back and have a Vipassana course then.
Yeah, please do.
Um, all right. Yeah, I think maybe that's clarifying um, a little bit about what shamatha actually is. That's probably a good place to end this course. And thank you so much for everyone attending. Thank you, everyone looking or listening to the recordings. I find it hugely beneficial for myself to do these things. I think sometimes I think it's more for my benefit because it forces me to clarify things. It's if you're going to talk about something, you need to think it through a bit on your own first. So and that's extremely helpful for me. So and you've allowed me to do that. So thank you so much for that. And I hope to see you around. And thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.